said after, remember to record to the cloud and tell everybody to put yourselves on mute.
Mute.
Okay, so we are recording, you are on mute. And Shelly, because of the wonderful friends that we have, we are able to have you and our many other lecturers. And so I thank you. And if you're here for the first time or visiting, please check us out at www.stirlingfriends.org, and hopefully you will join us and become a friend as well. So without further ado, Shelly, you'll take us to Japan and the chain, and the children who were switched at birth, and
Yes.
you will keep us on our edge listening to your interpretation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. I look forward to these meetings. And tonight, like father, like son. And just so you know, the Japanese title translates very differently and is much more telling about the story itself, because it really comes out two ways. People have discussed the title. One way is, and so he becomes a father. And so he becomes a father, naturally referring to Ryota. The other is, and now I am a father. And now I am a father. So you could take them, the ambiguity extends beyond that to the film itself. But the director, Hirokazu Koreeda, is considered today's foremost Japanese director, as well as one of international cinema's finest storytellers. His style, as you've seen, emphasizes small but meaningful moments rather than dramatic tension and conflict. I mean, there are so many things going on in this film, and I'm going to, not include a lot in the conversation, which you certainly can bring up. And I always appreciate that when you jump in there and remind me of something, or yourself or the others. But, this is a film of considerable emotional complexity that quietly but definitely examines just what defines a family. And this is always Koreeda's quest, is to, all of his films, through his evolution, have dealt with what is a family. Is a family, parents with a natural child? Is a parents adopted children? Is a family a group of people that manage to come together somehow and thrive with each other? They become a family. All of his films explore this. He explores broken families. He explores families put together, and in this case, families thrown asunder by what happens. And it also deals with what it means to be a father and what it means to be a son, both dealing with Ryota and dealing with the other characters. And it follows a fairly predictable pattern at first. Then it transcends it with tenderness, humor, and an exquisite depth of feeling. It dramatizes the plight of a rigid-driven father trapped by conventional notions of family and success, and conventional notions of success in a culture that has enshrined work as a national religion. In Japan, I'm sure most of you know, work is seen as almost the national religion. Back at the beginning of the 20th century was the rise of what they called the salaryman, the worker, whether a white collar or even an industrial worker, they took a job for life and they were considered salarymen. I work. And they really were an offshoot, believe it or not, of what were known as the samurai during the 19th century and before, during the feudal system. And when that feudal system was broken up in the Meiji era, just to give you a little short history, those samurai were let loose, and then they had to figure out what to do. And that's when capitalism came in, and that's when they became salarymen, and it became much more of a capitalist society. And that's who He is. When we are first introduced to the Ninomaya family at the beginning, the first thing we see is a photograph, and we see photographs throughout the film that signify so much. They represent so much, but we see the three of them at the beginning, and we're immediately drawn to little Keita. His introduction, his introduction to school, it's an interview period. We also see that after that interview period, which is adorable, watching these kids, Ryota questions him on why he said he and his father like to go camping. They fly kites when they go camping. And Keita replies that the cram school teacher told him to. And that's another part of Japan, another societal thing in Japan, cram schools. There's such competition to get your kids into good schools. And also, especially in the class that this family is in, to assure their future. So he's immediately, and we're also getting the feeling that when he asked that question and his cram school teacher had to tell him that, and we think back on the film, we understand that right away, that's one of the clues that he didn't spend a lot of time with this kid, which comes out as the film evolves. And Ryota is a workaholic and a successful businessman. He hardly spends time with his family. When he tells his wife he's sorry he doesn't get to spend Sundays with Keita, his wife tells him that he's been telling him that for 6 years. For the 6 years they've had him, that they will spend Sunday together, and he hasn't obviously spent one. He says that he does not have time for quitters. We're getting, evidence of his personality when he and his wife are talking, and she's asking about a coworker who he will visit later on. We see him visiting later on in a natural setting outside of Tokyo. She asks him, and he says, "I don't have time for quitters." He was a quitter. He believes that the strong succeed, while kindness is nothing but a weakness. Kindness is nothing but a weakness. And while Midori says he's kind, that Keita is kind, but their lives change abruptly when they find out that Keita is not their biological child. The bomb drops, and that he was swapped with another child at the hospital. And then this goes back historically, when we see the people at the hospital talking about it, that back in the 60s, and it ended in 69, that when babies were born, that they identified it by writing on the bottom of their foot. So if somebody put the wrong thing on the bottom of a foot, the child would be, put in the wrong place, wrong family. But that stopped in 69. So how this happened becomes quizzical, but it turns out, as we find out, a nurse did it. A nurse decided to do it, and 3 of them was switched. And Ryota's first reaction is, to this discovery is, now I understand. At first, I understand why he's the way he is to him. He's making excuses, but he's really angry. He feels that but he goes on, he feels that Keita's lack of strength and gentleness is an explanation for his not being his son. He uses this, along the way, due to his own self-image of success and strength, which he projects on others as well. He projects that. Soon they meet the parents of their biological child, Ryosiki, and they have to decide whether they will swap the children or raise the one they already did for 6 years. Talk about a quandary. Talk about a dilemma. The choice Midori and Ryota have to make, as well as the couple who raised their biological child, is a dilemma. Whatever they choose, they will irreparably damage their lives. There can be irreparable damage to all of this. Either they have to give up the child they grew to love over the 6 years they raised him, or they have to give up raising their biological child. What's the balance? Ryota's co-worker calls the situation a tragedy. And certainly it is tragic. In the hospital, the staff say that 100% of couples decide to make the swap. Nevertheless, the decision cannot be made in advance since a variety of factors are to be considered: ethical, emotional, the well-being of the child, the psychological effect this will have on him, and so on. The fundamental question for the parents is whether the heritage which defines parenthood is strictly biological or a matter of socialization as well. In other words, nature versus nurture. Yukari, who raised Ryusi, is Ryota's opposite. He's a shopkeeper. He spends a lot of time with his children. He's not ambitious. When we first meet them, he's complaining that his wife made him late because he wore the wrong sweater. They're always arguing with one another. In other words, we see real people. We see real people. With all their arguing and bickering, they're a warmer couple. And we see that reflected in their life, even though he's happy just sitting at a counter, in the store. He has no ambition. He's floating through. But he spends a lot of time with the kids, as we see. He bathes with them. He flies kites with them. He behaves like a child himself when he's with his children. Now, it's interesting that when we see him sitting in the tub with the kids and they're playing and they're doing this different things and bringing Keita into it, that's a Japanese custom. It's not something unique to this family. It was something that most families did before. And because they didn't have American style or Western style tubs, they bathed in big pools, basically, and bathhouses, and families would get together. The mother would have been in the tub with them, as a matter of fact. The whole family would bathe together. So this was a cultural thing, which now changes. The fact that Ryota lives in a high rise. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. But he, at one point in the film, Ryota suggests to Yukari, and this was one of those little dramatic points, that he raised both children. Remember that moment in the restaurant? He says, how about if I take them both, basically, since their future must be taken into consideration. In other words, since Ryota has much more money, or he thinks he's the better half, he's younger and he's stronger in metabolism, as is stated. He has the right to more descendants than Yukari does. This is an affect. Yukari is, of course, deeply offended by that. He slaps him by that suggestion and just offhandedly refuses. But things change dramatically and in an ironic fashion when Ryota's biological son, comes to live with him. They don't immediately take to each other. Ryusei is asking all kinds of questions. He doesn't understand. I mean, the kid's 6 years old, and he's all of a sudden being put in another place that he thinks looks like a hotel compared to where he came from. What is this? What is this all about? Whereas, Keita at first also is a little afraid, but he warms in much quicker. But anyway, we finally, with all that goes on, all the trying to socialize him into that family, he runs away. He will eventually run away. And it's funny how he knows just what to do, how he sneaks on the train and he finds his way home. He's a resourceful kid. Now, remember, that's Ryota's son we're dealing with, and he's not seeing this. He's not seeing what a resourceful kid this is. But anyway, he comes back, and the offense that Ryota committed by saying, I'll take both, comes back to him. But it comes back to him in a very interesting way. As Yukari says, when he comes to get him, we have no problem with having both Ryusei and Keita. You know, it turns out that, a child's desire for care and attention is stronger than for the things Ryota has to offer. Ryota may be in a higher place, literally and not certainly not emotionally and economically, but he's not on higher ground when it comes to this. And it seems that Yukari is the one who is more virtuous than Ryota, that the mother, in this case, is more virtuous than the father in the response. In the scene when the two families go on a picnic, again, an interesting scene when Yukari, and they're having the discussion about flying kites and how he used to make the kites. And he says to him, he tells Ryota, you don't have to be like your father. Fly kites with Ryushi. Fly kites with him. In effect, loosen up, be a father. And Midori, at the same moment, we cut over to Midori and Yukari, and she confesses that maybe Kate is better off with them because she could never have any more children, and he'll have brothers and sisters. At that moment, Yukari realizes, and there is a kind of sisterhood between them. She takes her and embraces her. It's a touching moment, one of the touching moments in the film, an understanding of just who this other person is. And that whole scene closes with the picture of the two families. Again, a photograph. And if you really looked at that photograph, it's interesting because the Ninamayas, Ryota, Midori, and Keita, the parent, they're standing straight. They're smiling because he told them to smile, but they're smiling, but they're standing straight and rigid. And Keita, if you notice, is leaning in towards the other family. His head is cocked like this, as if he's leaning into that family. And that family is all over the place. They're holding each other, they're gripping each other, they're having fun. And it's all it's like a summation of what we've seen. And then we think of that scene when Ryota visits the nurse. He goes to her apartment, and the son comes out and stands up to him, adopted son, and that's another slap in the face. It's another slap in the face because it's an awakening for him to the realization of how he treated his own stepmother. And in a touching moment, we see him in the car calling her. He's breaking down. He's breaking down through this. He's evolving in some ways. One of the most heart-wrenching scenes is when Ryota discovers the pictures that Keita took in the camera. He begins to look and he sees who Keita really is, but more so he sees who he really is. He begins to break down totally. He cries, he realizes, what am I doing? He goes through that whole scene with his father, with his natural father, who, and this is again, was a traditional Japanese feeling that bloodline is more important than anything else. His father says to him, it's like horses, the bloodline is all important. And if you're smart, you take the other kid, and swap the kids and forget the other family. Because as time goes on, the one you have now is going to look more like his father, and he's going to look more like you. I mean, the most asinine things coming out of this man's mouth. And we can understand why Ryota is the way he is, but Ryota is taking counsel from so many different people. It's ridiculous. He can't seem to grasp what's going on. I mean, there's a vision of Japan in this, where work will be balanced, hopefully. An idealist look. Hopefully, one of the takeaways from the film is that hopefully work can be balanced with leisure and love. And the one who delivers that message, interestingly enough, is Ryota's boss. If you remember when he's talking to him, he says, you've always kept your foot on the gas pedal, right? It's about time for you to brake. He said, it's about time for you to hit the brake. And Ryota's confused. He says, but you got this far because you kept going. And he looks at him and he says, that was another time. That was another time. And that's the point. Japan went through these evolutions. If you're familiar with Japan's economic situation in the 90s, it fell into a terrible recession where many of these salarymen who had jobs that they thought they would have for life were laid off. It was the first time in their history since the war that they lost their jobs, and they wandered around like zombies. Many of them became homeless. It was a terrible time. So as a reaction to that, in the beginning of the millennium, when they started working again and the economy improved, that's when they put their foot on the gas. And they couldn't stop. I mean, we saw Ryota coming in on Saturday at the beginning, and the boss says, I didn't want you to see me. I didn't think, you'd be here. And he says, aren't you going to stay? We can have a drink later. He says, no, I'm going to the movies with my wife. I'm going to the movies with my wife. He's got a life. And that's what he's trying to tell him. Get a life. Get a life. It's interesting, and we see also, as I said, the difference between what I call the vertical lifestyle and the horizontal lifestyle. These are one of the few, now there are many more, luxury high-rises. I mean, we see at first Ryota living as a very upwardly mobile architect. He's 40 years old. He drives a big car. He lives in a beautiful apartment. This is highly unusual, and we see the other father. We see them living horizontally. They're spread out. They're in a rural area. It's the rural versus the city also in that the kids can go off by themselves. She trusts them. I love it when they go out and then they come to her store where she works and she's working. Midori doesn't work. We have a totally different lifestyle we're dealing with here, but we see a much warmer lifestyle naturally. Interesting that Koreeda puts him into a lighting store, an illumination store. Everything is illuminated in that family. I found that to be a kind of metaphor for what he does. And yet Ryota is an architect, but yet he can't seem to build his own life. He can't seem to build his family the right way. He can't seem to connect things, yet he's an architect. Interesting comparisons here. The ending of the film is somewhat naturally ambiguous and powerful. I thought it was powerful, probably the most powerful scene in the picture, when Ryota comes and Koreeda runs away from him, and they're walking down separate paths. You notice they're walking down separate paths. And Ryota is apologizing to him. He's coming out to him, trying to get him to understand. And they meet at the end of the paths where they converge. But symbolically, it may mean that although they were living together throughout the 6 years, they were walking separate paths. They were walking separate paths all along. And the symbolism is also twofold. They were walking separate paths because Ryota never spent time with him. Obviously, the time he did spend was fleeting. Yes, he'd sit down at the piano with him. He'd see him when he came home for dinner late. That's when he'd see him. And on the other hand, because he is not his biological father, nevertheless, at some point, they do come together. At some point, he hugs him. He understands, this man has been my father, the only father I know. yet he's come to know another family. And whether he will stay with Ryota or not, we can only guess. We can only guess what will happen. In the same manner in which the problems posed in the film are a conjecture themselves. The story is a conjecture. It's a story that Koreeda put together. But the whole idea at the end is also Koreeda expressing, this is now a new family. This may now be a new family. All of them together may share their experience. They won't split apart, hopefully, is what Koreeda is saying, because we see them all walking together. We see them all together at the end. We don't see them saying, well, you go your way, we'll go ours. We don't know what will happen. We can only guess. It is definitely something that Koreeda set up for discussion. Something he set up for discussion, which we will discuss in a few moments. But I want to tell you a little more about the film itself. That Koreeda, this is somewhat a little autobiographical for him. He grew up without a father. And now he, at the time of the making of the film, which was in 2013, so it's 10 years ago, his child is now 15, but his daughter was 5 years old at the time. And just like Ryota, and through the making of this film, he wanted to think about what blood connections really mean, an idea very close to him. In order to make the film interesting and compelling to the audience, he said, I placed Ryota in the situation of being a victim of switched babies. He is the victim of switched babies, is the way he looked at it. In fact, he said, when we look at Korea, Koreans who see the film, and he's talked to many, would choose bloodline even more than the Japanese. That still holds fast in Korea. They still believe in bloodlines, which is interesting. But and he talks about the last scene. He said it's explicit. It said that the two families merged as they all entered the house. So you cannot tell who was the child and who were the parents. That was his feeling. He has an exceptional gift for working with child actors. If you've seen any of his films, and from his first film that he won at the Cannes Film Festival, which is called Nobody Knows, which was a film that specifically dealt with a family of 5 children who were parentless. The mother deserts them in the apartment. She leaves, and the 11-year-old boy is left to take care of 4 siblings that range down to the age of about 3 or 4. And it is at once a miraculous film, a tragic film, a heartbreaking film. It won at the Cannes Film Festival, and the 10-year-old boy, I think he was 9 or 10 when he made the film, won the Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival. And that was Koreeda's breakthrough internationally. Since then, he did a film, he did Still Walking, about a Japanese family getting together, coming apart, and getting together again by the end. He did a film called I Wish, about 2 siblings that are separated by divorce in 2 different towns, but make a plan to meet up. It's a gentle comedy, but also a telling one. Again, about family. All his films were. And then he finally broke away 3 years ago, and he made a French film called The Truth with Catherine Deneuve and Ethan Hawke, which was about a family of celebrity, and how family myths can interrupt reality. What's real, what's not within a family. Memories get scrambled. It was an interesting look at them. But for him, the ideas that he portrays in his, and Shoplifters is a film about family. I think you've all seen that. as his most recent film called Border, which takes place in Korea and is about baby sellers, but it's not, doesn't go where you think, and it creates a family. It creates a family. But for him, the ideas reveal all of his quandaries and questions, indeed his regrets, and his happiness on becoming a father. It's all his questioning of who am I as a parent in the world, and what does family mean to me. So that's where he goes. And he was told early on by an actress, the actress in the film who has since passed away, who played the grandmother in the film. Kieran is her name, wonderful actress. She was in Sweet Bean. She's played in all of his films up to this one. She played in Shoplifters. She had a wonderful part in that. She's won many awards. She was one of the most beloved actresses. And she said to him, director, when during the making of the film, it was before making that film, when he made Still Walking in 2008, before he had children, she said to him, director, if you're going to go forward and make movies about families, I'd like you to experience marriage. If you get divorced, that's fine, but have kids so you can have the experience as a father. At the time those words were said to him, he said, I didn't have any children, but since then I've actually become a father, and that's why the importance of my father's existence really came into play for me. I could be a director like Yosujiro Ozu, a director you can look up if you don't know who he is. His last name is Ozu, O-Z-U. He directed Tokyo Story, among other great, magnificent films, but Ozu didn't have a family, and he never had a wife, and did things from a son's point of view, because he lived with his mother all his life. But for him, for Koreeda, since I do have that background in my life now, it has sort of complicated my viewpoint. And that's what's wonderful about making these kinds of films. They're complicated. So I hope you enjoyed it. And yes, I did leave out specific scenes or even shots. The cinematography was wonderful. It's those little things that mean so much. A chewed straw in a glass, right? A chewed straw in a glass, a broken toy. All of these little banal things mean so much in the context of the film. And the music I thought was also interesting. They used it was Glenn Gould's variations that played on the soundtrack, and I thought they really captured the emotion of the film very well. The music really captured the emotion of the film. So I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciated it, and now I'd like to hear from you, because I'm sure you should have things to say about it. So who's going to raise their hand and go first? Boy, I'm getting disappointed after all this time. Come on. Beth, jump right in there. You got to unmute, Beth.
1 minute.
There you go.
Okay, hi. Shelly, I love this movie, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the movie was shown with you as the facilitator at the Movies of Del Rey.
Yes, of course.
And I remember
a lot of places.
Yes, but I remember that's the only place I really saw you in the movies. I actually loved it the second time around. I picked up so many more things that I had forgotten the first time, which really was years ago that I had seen the movie. The acting, the kids acting, it was phenomenal. And it was a very, very sad story. And I was thinking, what would I do? It's a fabulous movie for a discussion.
Yes.
Because what would you do? I mean, do you just give up the child and take in a different one, a complete stranger, and say, I'm your dad, which they did do that. And it was heart-wrenching, but yet it was somewhat of a feel-good movie because I think the parents handled it beautifully. I think, especially the one that had the three kids, he was so enlightened. He was so, you could see how much he enjoyed his kids and they loved him. I can't say enough about this movie. It really was a winner. Thank you. It was wonderful. But I'm wondering, I did think about the ending. I really wish we knew a little more about what happened at the end. Who went home with who?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the big question. That's the big question. But Beth, thank you, because what you did also is, it's, I don't know if you've heard Shelley's rule. You have to see a film more than once.
Absolutely.
The first time you watch it and the second time you begin to see it. And I say begin
That's
to
true,
see
right,
it because
right.
you have to see it again and again and again over time.
Yeah.
And you'll pick up more and more. So thank you.
Okay.
And also for
Thank
saying
you.
this film invites discussion. So I'm waiting for the discussion. Rachel,
Okay.
thank you. I see you, Linda. Don't worry. I'll get to you. Rachel.
Okay, well, hold on. Let me get my video on. Hold on.
Okay. Terrific.
1 second. Hold on. Oh, there you go. All right. So I also loved the movie. My issue was that I understand you're saying it is the Japanese culture, but everybody besides the lead character wanted to keep things as is. I think they really did. I think the other parents were willing, they loved their kid, they weren't so like into the bloodline or something like that. Mm-hmm. And his wife was kind of silent, kind of not really saying, I'm okay with this. She just, I didn't know if it's just the Japanese culture or something. But what was very telling for me was that scene when she is taking the picture frames and putting him into the suitcase. And then when the father says, we will not know you anymore. And remember when they did the swap and the kid ran away and they didn't even acknowledge this kid that they raised for 6 years when they came over to the house, to the point where he was like hiding in a bed saying, they're not even acknowledging me. And for 6 years, they raised me. How heart-wrenching is that? So I loved the movie. I just was like, I can't imagine a mother just being okay with this. Just saying, okay, I'll give up this child. I've raised it for 6 years, but okay, and let's do a swap and not have anything, nothing. I understand it might be a different culture, but I just think as a mother is a mother, but I love them.
Great. I to answer, some of your question. First of all, yes, I mean, these women are painted very differently. Yukori, Risuki's mother, she was quiet, but she was also aware. When she pays back Ryota with that comment, we can watch the both of them because they seem to gravitate this way, as opposed to the man with the money who wants to take both of them. She's and at the beginning, and this is where I get into to Yukari there, the father, he the first thing he wanted was, what are you going to do for us? To the hospital. He wanted money. He wanted money. He had his flaws too. He knew that there was going to be, that maybe there's something in this for us. And even though he says, yeah, well, I guess you can't just give him up like a pet. He said, you can't just give him up like a pet. And she jumps on him and says, I wouldn't give up a pet. She says, I wouldn't give up a pet. So she's saying she grows attachment. She's attached. And I don't think, it's such a quandary, like how do you, in a culture, because you're dealing with a culture where up until after the war, and for a while even after the war, these people were into bloodline. It was important what your bloodline was. This would determine who you are. And now this is being broken, and people have to deal with it. And I think that's, and whereas you're right, whereas they were concerned, the other family, they live in the boondocks, they to them it just didn't seem, why should we swap? He says, you wouldn't give up a pet, or you would give up a pet. So I guess, and she says, no. She didn't want to. And this kid was, they were products of their nature. Products of their nature. The chewing on the straw, the way they played. Oh my God. I love that. He's constantly, oh my God. Like his father. He got that from his, not his blood father, but from his father. There are little things that Corriere does in the film that he's cluing us in. It makes it much more complicated to split these kids up like that. You can't just do it. So it does raise those questions, but there's a lot of cultural stuff going on in there. I mean, because here, Japan is nowhere near as diverse as we are. I mean, they're not diverse at all, essentially. They're Japanese. Whereas here, you're dealing with a diverse population. And if you split two kids up in either two religions or two households, that are just so opposed to each other, how do you make these decisions? Where do they come from? It really presents problems. And I know you've talked about it. Some of you have talked about at the beginning about stories that you've seen or heard about this. So let's see. Who do we want to call up? Unmute yourself. I see the hand.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah,
I had a lot of dealings with Japanese students many years ago, and it's, as we all know, a very disciplined society. Now, I don't think another country would be as willing to hear the government say, well, you have to give up your child, and that they're going to have to be switched. I just don't think that there are, I don't think it would happen in America. I don't think it would happen anywhere else that I could think of. But in Japan, if they're told that this is what has to be, that's what they did. But, it's heart-wrenching for all of us. And to me, it's cruel. But I thought that the end, as far as I was concerned, the ending was very uplifting, because I really did believe that the children would go back to the parents that had been bringing them up, not perhaps the natural parents, because it really at that point didn't make any sense. They were brought up in two different cultures. So, I mean, that's my feeling, that the ending was very positive.
But it does raise a question, in my mind. It raises a question of if they went back to the status quo, to what it was, is each one of them is going to feel that my blood son has an advantage. One says, my blood son has a tremendous advantage. He lives in Tokyo. He's being raised in a wealthy family. And you could feel good about that. Say, well, this kid's got all the advantages now. Or the fact is, but he's not how I would raise him. These are the complexities that we have to deal with. Who is that, Susan? Yeah, unmute.
Just did it. I want to just go back to the role of the mothers, because we're talking about a cultural thing. The father was the more dominant in both families, whether we liked it or not. So the mother really didn't have the say in what to do. And also the hospital gave them the choice to work it out among themselves as to what they were going to do. I didn't think it was that the hospital told them what they had to do. And in a way, they tried to do it to get acquainted, to see how the other one lived. They were so in different positions that it was really hard to have a meeting ground. and how they raised their children were totally different. So when you're going to move one person to another and you say, okay, bloodline, the child was raised so differently that he couldn't fit in, and he couldn't react to the parents who were more distant than his father who played with him, and his mother who was sweet and soft and touchy. So it was a very interesting dynamic. And we'd like to imagine, my take on the ending, so I'll just say my take on the ending,
Sure.
was that they went in together as a group, and they were still working it out. They were still working it out. He wanted the boy back because he realized, oh, this kind, lovely child who is not me, because I remember at the piano recital, he played Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then this girl sat there and played this concerto and going like, whoa. And he said to the boy, aren't you jealous? Aren't you angry? And he said, no. He was happy. He said, she's like a genius. And so that was a very interesting take on the child, who the child was and his nature. And the other one was, it was just a very wonderful movie who I could see it again, which I should.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Thank you, Susan. That's a great comment about yes, that piano recital moment. You see him playing, and then you see this kid sitting down at the piano, and yes, he recognized genius. I mean, he could grow up to become her agent. I mean, that's what he probably would do. But the idea is, yes, he knew his own little shortcoming. I can't be what somebody wants me to be. He has to be himself. He's 60 years old, for Christ's sakes. This is another thing that Japan did to kids. If you remember what was it called? The sukiyaki method, or whatever it was called, where they learned to play the violin, right? And then the piano, and they are trying to turn out, musical geniuses all over the place, is nuts. It's rigid, it's uniform, and that's the way Ryota is. Rigid and uniform. He could, when he goes to visit that coworker out in the boondocks, and he sees that bug climbing on the tree, and he says it took him 10 years to adapt. He says, 10 years? Slow down, buddy. Slow down. Things take time. It was interesting to see. There were so many scenes in the movie that are indicative of this. So and that's why you have to watch it again. Terrific. Thank you. Marilyn. And then Linda, I see you.
I actually like the way the movie ended a lot, because it gives us questions, and it's not like set in stone. And I like that, because everybody will have their own interpretation, and I just love the way he ended it, rather than telling us.
Yes.
As our discussion goes. Now, for me, the way I would see it, I guess in my Pollyanna way, is that they will continue the relationship. They are sort of tied in together now, much like aunts and uncles and family and whatever. And I think I would hope, I don't know if the Japanese culture could handle that. Maybe a modern Japanese culture, as opposed to what it was years and years and years ago. But I would love to think that the children would benefit from both family units, because there's good in each. And if they could do that and benefit from it down the road, I think it would be win-win-win situations. And will it always be wonderful and terrific? Of course not, but where is it? So I like to think that that's the road they're going to take.
I tend to agree with you. I think that it's a way of, ideally, it's idealistic certainly, but it breaks new ground. It says there are different ways to approach this, and why not? Why couldn't they form one big happy family? Why couldn't they visit each other? Why couldn't they switch at times? Why couldn't they, benefit from each other's not only their positive points, but their flaws. You know, they will learn from their flaws and hopefully gain insight into who they are and who their families are. Very interesting. Thank you, Marilyn. Linda Pava.
Well, I agree with Marilyn. That's how I felt, because if you notice, the men kind of hugged or put their arms around each other as they were walking in, you know, the whole
Yeah.
family. So I felt that it was going to be a foursome. But I was curious, do the Japanese people go to see this? Because their take on it would be completely maybe different from ours. You know, the old question of which is more important, nature or nurture. In this particular movie, I seem to feel it's nurture. Because
Well, yeah,
genetics,
I think we tend to. I think we tend to, as a society, believe in nature. But the Japanese, they're divided. They love his movies. I mean,
did they?
he is.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean, he is their premier filmmaker. Although they're a little weird when it comes to movie going, but they like his movies. The critics all love his movies. He's always winning awards. Korea as well, but they're definitely split. As I said, the Koreans believe more in bloodline than the Japanese do. So you have a split. You have a split population where this is concerned, and it's a debate. It's a debate that is ongoing. That is on, and it's changing because he's making movies that go that way. All his movies deal with fractured or gerrymandered families. I mean, they're people come into them that don't seem to fit. And then all of a sudden they fit better than the ones who were originally there. I mean, it's very interesting what he does. And he makes it all seem natural. He makes it all seem natural. That's the beauty of it, is, you know, and one of the things here is the performances is spectacular. I thought the performances were so natural in the characters. By the way, the one who plays Ryota was a popular singer before he became an actor. He was one of these idols. He was a teenage idol and a great musician, and he decided to become an actor, and he did a very good job. Lily Frankie, who plays the other father, his name is Lily. Lily Frankie is one of Koreeda's mainstays in his films. He stars in a number of his films, is a wonderful actor. He changes his personality. He could be like that, and he can be a lot more intense too. He's a wonderful actor. And the women I thought were terrific too, even in their silences, their looks at each other. They seem to have an understanding with each other that the men had to work at in the film. So
it definitely pulls on your heartstrings, that's for sure.
Yes, thank you. Dora, and I saw Karen's hand. I saw you, Karen, right after Dora. Go ahead.
Okay. It also shows how this Keita father starts to change once he sees all these pictures, and even before, because what the other people are talking to him, you know, take it easy and take care more of your family, and so it's in his mind. And also when the mother, there's a scene where the mother says that she's beginning to love her real child, but she feels like she's betraying Kaita because it's like a like a feeling that she loves one child and she's beginning to love the other child. So maybe eventually, they will be both loved at the same time. Like everybody said, that at the end, maybe they'll become a big family, maybe like what they used to do, they spend one weekend in the other family's house, and this one spends a weekend here, and maybe they get together, fly a kite, and things like that. Do a picnic like they did. That would be nice. It would be a nice ending. So, but I saw how the transformation of the father and also of the mother of this child, like, you know, that they were so rigid. But he started to change. I felt that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say what you did about the mother, because remember, Midori couldn't have any more children.
Right.
And Yukari now could say to her, well, if this happens, well, now you've got three more. Now you've got three more, because if this becomes this blended family, this woman who can only have one child can grow into three more, into her natural son, who is the other one, and his siblings. You know, why not? Why not? Why could not the one mother who embraces her and feels empathy for her say, well, you know what? Take mine. You know, she can get frustrated too. You know, yeah, take them for a week. But it becomes a very beneficial and symbiotic relationship that you can build from this. If you think about it, if you open up your head and think about all these reasons. So thank you,
I
Dora.
wanted to mention that I saw a movie, I think it was from Almodovar, where also there was a switch.
Parallel mothers, yes.
Yes. So what happened is that one of the babies dies.
Yes.
And then there's a realization that it's her friend's, what she believes is hers, it's not hers, it's the other mother. Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
that was very, very hard.
Yes, thank you. Karen and then Linda Hock. I saw you. We'll get to you next. Karen?
Well, I think that the little boy they had originally would go back to the architect, because at the end he told him his mission was accomplished. And somewhere in the middle, when he went to the other family, it was like it was his mission to go there. And so when he was, trying to get him to come to him, he said, "Your mission is finished now." And but I like the idea of the families, and I think it's very, very possible the families would, get together as friends at least.
Yeah, I mean, look, we often, we use the cliche that was developed some years ago. It takes a village to raise a child. Well, this is a little microcosm village now. This is what we mean by that. It doesn't take 1 million people to raise a child. It takes sometimes a few, and we can stretch it to that in here. But it is, yes, a nice way to think about it. Thank you. Linda Hock.
Yeah, I thought with the only possible way that the families could come out whole was to have some sort of relationship with each other, no matter how they worked it out, because whether you take your natural child or the child that you've been raising back home with you, you're always going to wonder about the other, wonder and worry and all. So if you work out something, they were doing pretty good, switching back and forth, letting the boys go here and go there. So if they could have continued that and just built on that, then we've been able to satisfy that. They would know that they were both okay, the one that they, that they created and the one that they've been raising. And then of course, I'm a Pollyanna, like, Marilyn was saying too, I always want everything to be fine, but I could see that happen, because the worst part would be the not knowing.
Yeah.
What's happening. Are they okay? Are they being raised? Are they, whatever. So if you could just both be active, you could have your separate homes and everything, but you could get together regularly. You could swap the children back. The one that has more money could help both boys later, with school and things like that. And the ones, because everybody has their strengths, and none of us can be the be all end all for anybody. So they could turn this into a very positive thing, where you have,
absolutely
an extra people loving you. And then when the boys got old enough, then they could share the story of their birth. when they were old enough to understand, but you can't do that with 6-year-olds. They're already too old. They're not like if they'd been 2, they might could have seamlessly done it, but there's no way not to come out of that scarred because they don't know. They don't know why this is happening.
Right.
So I
right.
think the only solution for happiness, in healing with the families would have been some sort of blended type thing.
I think, your explanation is terrific, and I'll take it further, is the fact that not only, they all have their strengths and their flaws, but there's no reason these two can't become brothers in a sense.
Right.
They become brothers in a sense, and the fathers themselves could feed off each other's strengths. Yes, one has money and can help, but the other has nurturing help and give them pointers,
So you
let me tell you how to make a kite.
missing places.
Yeah. One of the things that's missing from the film, except where Ryota was concerned, is the only extended family we see is his. We see his father and stepmother. We see a brother. We only see his brother perfunctorily at the dinner, and his brother's a much different person than he is. Seemed much more lively, much warmer, much more attuned to who his parents were. And that's the only real extended family we see. We don't see an extended family on the other side, and we don't see his wife's extended family, if there is one. It's very interesting because how, now you say, okay, now these children have extended family to deal with. And that's another wrinkle that can exist. And I think that's the point of the film, is this is one of the few times where you could sit there and have a discussion and say, well, I'd like to see it go this way. I'd like to see it go that way. It's open-ended. It's open-ended. It's for society to decide. It's for individuals to decide. And I like that. I like that very much in the film. So thank you, Linda. Anybody else out there? Yes, Anne. Anne, you've got to unmute yourself. There you
I
go.
don't know who remembers, but many years ago, there was a television series, a reality television series, where families swapped, where the wives went, a wife that was in a very disciplined military type of family switched to a free spirit family. And the whole idea was, how do you adjust to a different environment? And did anybody remember seeing that program?
Yes.
Yeah. When I saw this, I thought, golly gee, there is another way of adjusting and seeing another side. And it's different as an adult, very different. As these kids, another story. The other thing, they may not feel like brothers, these kids, but they certainly can feel like cousins. Because they'll share experiences, and they'll share people that love each other. And my friend Izzy and I have a difference of opinion on this, on the nurse.
Right.
Izzy will tell you how she feels about it.
I thought the nurse said that she did it on purpose. Is that what she said?
Well, yeah, she was jealous. She was envious, and by what, seeing the two mothers, and she did it on purpose. Yes.
There you go.
What was her purpose? How do you satisfy jealousy by causing somebody else's pain?
Ask her.
She was going through, if I remember correctly, she was going through a bad marriage at that time, at that point in time. And she was looking at, disadvantaged family, and it's, why should they have it all? Why should they have it all? And she took one kid and switched it. What if I gave that kid to somebody else, basically, and gave somebody else the advantage, is in her mind.
Does she get punished?
Yeah. Well, not really. Well, in reality, she did get punished.
Right.
She went to jail. Yes. But in here, she pays reparation. She offered reparations to the family. He wouldn't take it. And his lawyer, said, well, what do you want to go after? This is a tragedy. What are you going to do? It's really not about the money. That's what turns you off with the other father, is why are you putting money on this? Don't put price tags on it. That's not what it's about.
Right.
But thank you,
gave us-
Ann.
You gave us a list of films that this director did, but the first movie that you told us about, I missed hearing the name of that film. Can you remember the first one you told us about?
I'm sure I can. Sure I can. How much is it worth to you? No, nobody knows. Nobody
you-
knows.
I'll give you
No.
a kiss.
That's it. Now I'll tell you everything.
Shelley, I
Nobody
have to-
knows.
Shelley, I have
Nobody knows. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Marilyn?
I have to close. It's
Oh, wait,
after
I have
8
one
and
more
I have to
quick-
go.
I have one more quick question to answer. Alice Soskin asked, how did the director manage training the young child actors? It's more like, how did the young child actors train him? I think kids make the best actors. They are the best actors. They are totally instinctual. They are open to expressing themselves, and through playfulness, through however you do it, they are just terrific. That's how they work. Kids are very, very honest and open as actors, and it's always wonderful to see. And he has a wonderful way with them. Wonderful way with them. Okay, Marilyn.
If I may,
Shelley,
Oh,
if
Dora,
I
I've
may,
got to
can I say
go.
something? I'm sorry.
Dora, I have
It-
to leave.
Okay, I'm recommending the movie Radical. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
okay. Thank
Shelley,
you.
rock
Yes.
rock the Casbah next.
Next month is, yes, Rock the Casbah, another family movie about another crazy family. And it is the last movie of Omar Sharif. It was the last movie of Omar Sharif, and he's wonderful in it. But it is summer in Tangiers, and a
on my
family
way
comes
in a minute.
together for 3 days following the death of their father to share memories and grieve his loss. As the Muslim tradition dictates, 3 sisters and their mother. It is a little tongue in Chekhov. 3 sisters and their mother. Deals come to settle scores, and there's laughter and tears and collective hysteria, and a lot lying underneath. So I hope I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Shelley.
For-
Okay.
Good night.
Everybody.
Thank you.
See, we got
Take
lots of
care.
discussion.